There is a game being played all around you. It is the game of success, of wealth, of accomplishment. Most people believe the rules are simple. Work hard, be smart, take risks, and you will win. They believe the winners earned their victory through sheer force of will, that they are the sole architects of their fortune, titans forged in the fires of their own ambition. They look at figures like Warren Buffett, a man who spun a small textile mill into a $500 billion empire, and they see a self-made man, a singular genius who cracked the code. But what if I told you that the man himself believes this story is a dangerous fiction? What if the single most important secret to his enduring success, the mental model that underpins his entire investment philosophy, is the profound and uncomfortable acknowledgement that he won the most important lottery of all before he was even born? This is not a story about diminishing achievement, it is about sharpening it. It is about an idea so powerful it can inoculate you against the single most destructive force in business and in life: arrogance. It is the story of the Ovarian Lottery, and it is the key to winning the game before it even starts. This journey begins not in a boardroom but in a lecture hall. The year is 1997. The air at the University of Florida is thick with the humid ambition of young minds, business students eager to absorb the secrets of the master. Warren Buffett stands before them, not as a distant oracle, but as a grandfatherly figure about to share a fundamental truth. He doesn't open with a stock tip or a complex financial formula, he opens with a thought experiment. He asks the students to imagine themselves back in the womb, 24 hours before they are to be born. A genie appears and offers them a deal. The genie will allow them to decide the economic and political system of the world they are about to enter. They can design it however they see fit: capitalist, socialist, anything in between. There's just one catch. As they design this perfect world, a barrel containing 7 billion slips of paper, one for every person on Earth, is spinning beside them. Once they've finalized their rules, they have to reach into that barrel and pull out one slip. That slip will determine who they will be: their gender, their race, their nationality, their natural abilities, their health, their parents, station in life. They don't know if they'll be born in a Manhattan penthouse or a famine-stricken village in sub-Saharan Africa. They don't know if they'll be born with a brilliant mind for physics or a debilitating chronic illness. He calls this the Ovarian Lottery. And with that single, elegant metaphor, Buffett shatters the foundational myth of the self-made man. He forces these future leaders to confront the terrifying, liberating reality of luck. He then turns the lens on himself. He tells them, "I won the Ovarian Lottery." He was born in 1930, in the United States. He was born white and male, which he is quick to point out was a significant advantage at that time. He was born with a set of wiring that happened to be perfectly suited for a specific game: allocating capital in a market economy. He says if he had been born thousands of years ago, his skill set would have been worthless. He'd have been some wild animal's lunch because he can't run fast or climb well. But he was lucky. He was born into a system that showered immense rewards on the ability to analyze businesses and invest money. The American tailwind, the incredible economic growth of the 20th century, was the wind in his sails. His personal efforts were the rudder and the trim of the sails, but the wind itself was a gift. This is the bedrock, the starting point of his entire philosophy. It's the radical idea that acknowledging the vast, unearned advantages you've been given is not an act of self-deprecation, but the first step toward true financial wisdom and sustainable success. The human brain, however, is not wired to think this way. We are narrative creatures, and the most compelling narrative is the one where we are the hero of our own story. This is driven by a powerful cognitive bias known as the fundamental attribution error. It is our deep-seated tendency to believe that the outcomes in our own lives are primarily the result of our internal qualities, our intelligence, our grit, our character. When we succeed, it's because we are brilliant. When we fail, it's because of external circumstances, bad luck, or an unfair system. Yet, when we observe others, we do the exact opposite. If someone else succeeds, we are more likely to attribute it to luck or circumstance. If they fail, we see it as a flaw in their character or ability. This bias is the engine of the self-made myth. It creates a feedback loop where every win reinforces a belief in our own exceptionalism. The Ovarian Lottery is a direct and forceful intervention against this flawed mental software. It forces you to reverse the attribution. It demands that you look at your own success and first account for the external factors, the lucky breaks, the societal structures that supported you. This isn't about denying your hard work, it's about putting it in its proper context. Why is this so critical for effective decision-making? Because the fundamental attribution error leads directly to hubris. It convinces you that your success in one area makes you an expert in all areas. It makes you dismissive of contrary opinions and blind to emerging risks. It makes you believe you can't lose. By consciously adopting the Ovarian Lottery as a mental model, you are installing a piece of code that constantly prompts you, how much of this success was me, and how much was the environment I'm operating in? How much was skill, and how much was luck? This single question is the foundation of the intellectual humility that separates the merely successful from the enduringly wealthy. So how do you take this philosophical concept and forge it into a practical tool for personal growth? You can start with a simple but profound exercise I call the 24-hour lottery ticket audit. Take out a piece of paper or open a new document. First, I want you to write down 10 fundamental facts about your life over which you had absolutely zero control. Don't overthink it. List things like the country you were born in, the year you were born, your native language, the general economic stability of your society during your upbringing, your parents, level of education, your innate health and physical abilities, your gender, your race, the technologies that were available when you entered the workforce, and the basic legal framework of property rights that you take for granted. This is your lottery ticket. Now for the second step, go through that list, one by one. Next to each item, write a brief sentence about how this specific unearned factor acted as a tailwind in your life or career. For example, being born in the United States gave me access to stable capital markets and a reliable legal system. Or, speaking English as a native language gave me a massive advantage in global business and access to information. Be honest and specific. The third step is a visualization. Imagine all 10 of those tickets are thrown back into a global barrel containing 8 billion possible combinations. Now, mentally reach in and pull out 10 new ones at random. You are now born in a different country, in a different decade, with a different body, into a different family. Finally, the fourth step. Reflect. Holding that new, random lottery ticket in your mind, what is the probability of achieving your current level of success? The purpose of this exercise isn't to induce guilt, it's to cultivate a visceral, gut-level understanding of the powerful forces that have propelled you forward. It is the practical application of Buffett's thought experiment, a way to move the Ovarian Lottery from an interesting idea into a core part of your operating system. It systematically dismantles the illusion of being entirely self-made and replaces it with a more accurate and ultimately more powerful map of reality. To truly understand the power of this mindset, we must examine its opposite, the path of the 99%, the path of the master of the universe. This is the individual who fully subscribes to the self-made myth. Their success, in their mind, is a direct and complete reflection of their own genius. They are not lucky, they are deserving. This mindset is not just a philosophical error, it is a strategic liability of catastrophic proportions. Consider the archetypes of the dot-com bubble in the late 1990s. Young entrepreneurs, often with little real business experience, found themselves at the helm of companies with billion-dollar valuations. They were hailed as visionaries. They believed their own press. They confused a historic bull market, a massive collective wave of good luck, with their own unique ability to pick winners or craft strategy. This hubris led them to make reckless decisions. They spent lavishly on Super Bowl ads for companies with no profits. They engaged in ruinous bidding wars for talent, They believed they were playing a new game with new rules, a game where fundamentals no longer mattered. They were masters of the universe, and the old laws of finance did not apply to them. Then, in March of 2000, the luck ran out. The market turned. The tailwind became a headwind. And their genius evaporated overnight. Companies like Pets.com or Webvan, once lauded as the future, became punchlines, their names etched in history as monuments to arrogance. The tragedy is that many of these people were genuinely smart and hardworking. But their failure to acknowledge the role of luck, their embrace of the master of the universe complex, made them brittle. They had no margin for error, no humility to prompt caution, no gratitude for the incredible market environment that had lifted them up. They thought they were flying, when in reality they were just falling with style. This is the ultimate danger of rejecting the Ovarian Lottery. It makes you a beautiful, fragile glass cannon, destined to shatter at the first sign of real adversity. The financial connection here is not subtle, it is monumental. When you internalize the Ovarian Lottery, you stop seeing your success as an isolated event and start seeing it as a partnership with the society you inhabit. The financial manifestation of this is what Buffett calls the American tailwind. Think of it this way: being born in the United States in the 20th century was like being gifted a significant, non-dilutable equity stake in the most successful growth enterprise in human history. Let's quantify this. From 1930, the year Buffett was born, to today, the United States has experienced unprecedented economic expansion. The GDP of the country, a measure of the total economic output, grew from around $90 billion to over $25 trillion. That's not a straight line up, of course, there were recessions and downturns, but the overarching trend is a colossal, wealth-creating machine. The S&P 500, a broad measure of the stock market, delivered an average annual return of roughly 10% over that period. This means that capital invested in the broad market had a powerful, persistent, upward bias. On top of this economic engine, you had a system of stable property rights, a trusted reserve currency, the world's best universities, and a political system that, for all its flaws, has remained remarkably stable. These weren't things you created, these were things you were given. This is the tailwind. Your individual effort, your business idea, your investment portfolio, all of it was placed on this powerful current. The financial advantage is almost incalculable. It meant that even mediocre ideas could succeed. It meant that mistakes were often forgiven by a rising tide of prosperity. It meant that the reward for being right was exponentially magnified. To ignore this, to claim that your wealth was created in a vacuum, is not just an act of ingratitude, it's an act of profound financial delusion. Acknowledging the Ovarian Lottery is simply the act of reading the country's balance sheet and recognizing that you were born a preferred shareholder. This foundational understanding of luck leads us directly to the second pillar, humility as a strategic weapon. In the world of high-stakes business and finance, humility is often mistaken for weakness, for a lack of confidence or conviction. This is a grave misunderstanding. True humility, the kind born from internalizing the Ovarian Lottery, is an active, offensive tool. It is the essential antidote to the poison of hubris, which has brought down more empires than incompetence ever could. There is no better illustration of this than Warren Buffett's trial by fire with Salomon Brothers. In 1987, Buffett's Berkshire Hathaway invested $700 million in Salomon, a swashbuckling Wall Street investment bank. Then, in 1991, a massive scandal erupted. A rogue trader named Paul Moser was found to have been submitting false bids in U.S. Treasury auctions, a flagrant violation of federal law. The firm was facing indictment, its clients were fleeing, and its very survival was in question. The U.S. Treasury was on the verge of banning Salomon from bidding in auctions, a move that would have been a death sentence. In this moment of crisis, Buffett was asked to step in as interim chairman. He flew to New York and faced a maelstrom of regulatory fury, public outrage, and internal panic. What did he do? He didn't bluster, he didn't deny, he didn't try to spin the story. He acted with breathtaking humility and integrity. He went before a United States congressional subcommittee and delivered one of the most remarkable testimonies in business history. He began by apologizing, unequivocally. He took full responsibility. He laid out, with total transparency, what had happened and the steps he was taking to fix it. His most famous line from that period became the firm's new mantra: "Lose money for the firm, and I will be understanding. Lose a shred of reputation for the firm, and I will be ruthless." His approach was not that of a Wall Street titan trying to protect his turf. It was the approach of a citizen who understood he was a steward of an institution that relied on public trust. This profound humility, this willingness to admit fault and clean house, is what saved Salomon Brothers. It convinced the Treasury not to deliver the death blow. It reassured clients and employees. It was a masterclass in leadership, and it was entirely fueled by a mindset that understands that reputation and trust are precious assets, easily destroyed by the arrogance of believing you are above the rules. The psychological principle at play here is a powerful defense against a specific form of intellectual decay known as the Dunning-Kruger effect. This cognitive bias describes a phenomenon where individuals with low ability in a certain domain tend to dramatically overestimate their competence. But there's a more dangerous high-level version of this that afflicts the successful. When you achieve great success in one field, say stock picking or building a software company, your brain can trick you into believing that your expertise is transferable to all other fields. You become the billionaire who suddenly thinks he's a genius epidemiologist, or the brilliant engineer who believes he has all the answers to complex geopolitical problems. This is the Dunning-Kruger effect on steroids, fueled by success and public acclaim. It leads to what investors call style drift. A value investor suddenly starts speculating on biotech startups, or a real estate mogul makes a massive, ill-informed bet on a technology company. It is the siren song of hubris, luring you out of your area of strength and onto the rocks of your own ignorance. The strategic humility born from the Ovarian Lottery is the perfect countermeasure. It leads directly to one of Buffett's other core mental models, the circle of competence. This is the conscious, disciplined practice of identifying what you know well and, just as importantly, what you don't know. Humility isn't about thinking you're bad at what you do. It's about having a brutally honest and accurate assessment of the boundaries of your expertise. It's the voice in your head that says, just because you won the game of business doesn't mean you understand the game of international politics. It keeps you grounded, focused, and playing the game you know you can win. It's a firewall against the kind of ego-driven mistakes that can erase a lifetime of wealth. This concept of intellectual humility can be operationalized through a powerful exercise called the circle of competence audit. This is not a one-time activity, but a regular practice for any serious leader or investor dedicated to high performance. First, take a blank sheet of paper and draw 3 concentric circles, like a target. The small, central circle is your core mastery zone. Inside this circle, you will list only those subjects, skills, or industries where you have deep, demonstrable, and hard-won expertise. This is not what you have a casual interest in. This is what you know cold. For Buffett, this circle would contain things like insurance, banking, and consumer goods. For a software engineer, it might be a specific coding language or system architecture. Be brutally honest and keep this circle small. The second larger circle is your familiar territory. Here, you list areas that you understand reasonably well. You can follow a conversation, you know the key players, but you are not a true expert. You might be able to spot opportunities here, but you know you'd need to consult with a core master before making a significant move. The outermost space beyond the second circle is the zone of ignorance. This contains everything else. The rule of the audit is simple but profound. All major capital allocation decisions, career moves, and strategic bets must be made from within your core circle of mastery. You can work to expand your core circle over time through deliberate study and practice, but you never, ever pretend it's larger than it is in the present moment. This blueprint forces you to operationalize humility. It creates a visual, tangible representation of your intellectual boundaries. It's a decision-making filter that protects you from the Dunning-Kruger effect and the expensive allure of ventures you don't truly understand. It's the practical implementation of the CEO mindset that values being right over just being in the action. The antithesis to this disciplined humility is the tragic and cautionary tale of long-term capital management, or LTCM. If ever there was a firm built on the rejection of intellectual humility, this was it. Founded in 1994, LTCM was a hedge fund with a roster of intellectual titans that was simply staggering. It included John Meriwether, the legendary head of bond trading at Salomon Brothers, and two Nobel Prize-winning economists, Myron Scholes and Robert C. Merton. These were, by any objective measure, the smartest guys in the room. Their entire business was built on a belief in their own intellectual superiority. They developed complex quantitative models to exploit tiny, temporary pricing discrepancies in global bond markets. Their strategy, known as arbitrage, was supposed to be virtually risk-free. They believed their models were so sophisticated that they had essentially eliminated risk from the equation. This supreme confidence, this utter lack of humility led them to take on breathtaking amounts of leverage. For every $1 of their own capital, they borrowed more than $25. They were so certain of their genius that they saw no need for a buffer against the unexpected. In their worldview, there was no room for bad luck, for the fat tail event their models said was impossible. In 1998, the impossible happened. Russia defaulted on its domestic debt. It was a black swan event, a shockwave that sent global markets into a panic. Correlations that had held for decades broke down. Investors fled to safety, and the small pricing discrepancies that LTCM exploited widened into massive, gaping chasms. Their supposedly risk-free positions turned into catastrophic losses. Because of their immense leverage, the fund was vaporized in a matter of weeks. Their hubris was so great, and their positions so large, that their collapse threatened to take the entire global financial system down with it, forcing the Federal Reserve to orchestrate a massive bailout. LTCM is the ultimate parable of the failure to respect the circle of competence. The Nobel laureates were geniuses in financial theory, their core circle, but they drifted into the business of predicting the collective psychology of global markets under extreme duress, a zone of ignorance for everyone. Their story serves as a stark reminder that in the world of finance, intellectual arrogance is the most dangerous form of liability. The direct financial connection of strategic humility is one of the cornerstones of value investing, the margin of safety. Popularized by Benjamin Graham, Buffett's mentor, the margin of safety is the principle of buying an asset for a price significantly below your estimate of its intrinsic value. If you calculate a business is worth $100 per share, you don't buy it at 95. You wait until you can buy it at 60 or 50. This discount is the margin of safety, but it is crucial to understand that this is not just a mathematical technique, it is the financial embodiment of humility. Why do you insist on a margin of safety? Because you are humble enough to admit that your own calculations could be wrong. Because you are humble enough to admit that the future is inherently unpredictable. Because you are humble enough to know that bad luck, a recession, a new competitor, a disruptive technology can and will happen. The margin of safety is a financial buffer that protects your portfolio from three things: your own fallibility, the errors of others, and the randomness of the universe. An investor who believes they are a genius, who trusts their forecasts implicitly, feels no need for a large margin of safety. They are comfortable paying a high price because they are certain of the future. The humble investor, the one who has internalized the Ovarian Lottery, knows that the future is a probability distribution, not a single point. Therefore, they demand compensation for that uncertainty in the form of a low price. This principle directly translates humility into superior risk-adjusted returns over the long term. It is what allows you to survive the inevitable downturns and market panics. While the arrogant are wiped out by a single, unexpected event, the humble investor, protected by their margin of safety, survives to invest another day. It is the single greatest wealth preservation tool ever devised, and it is born directly from the mindset of knowing that you don't have all the answers. From this foundation of humility, we build our third pillar, gratitude as a catalyst for action. This is a critical pivot. Understanding the Ovarian Lottery is not meant to lead to fatalism or passivity. It is not an excuse to say, well, it's all luck, so why bother? On the contrary, for someone like Buffett, a deep and profound understanding of your good fortune creates an equally profound sense of responsibility. It ignites a feeling of gratitude that is not a quiet, gentle emotion, but a powerful, driving force. It becomes a catalyst for ambitious, focused action. The most potent example of this in Buffett's life is the creation of the Giving Pledge. In 2010, Warren Buffett, alongside Bill and Melinda Gates, launched an unprecedented campaign. They asked the world's billionaires to publicly commit to giving away at least half of their wealth to philanthropic causes. This was not just a fundraising drive. It was a public statement of a shared philosophy, and if you read Buffett's own pledge letter, it is a masterclass in the Ovarian Lottery mindset. He writes, and I paraphrase, that his wealth is disproportionate to what he has contributed to society. He explicitly credits his fortune to the combination of luck, living in America, and compound interest. He sees the immense wealth he has accumulated not as a trophy to be polished, but as a pile of claim checks on society's resources. And he feels a moral obligation to ensure those claim checks are cashed for the benefit of humanity, rather than being used to build a dynastic fortune for his descendants. This is the pinnacle of actionable gratitude. It's looking at the winning lottery ticket you hold and deciding that the winnings don't just belong to you, but to the system that made the lottery possible in the first place. It transforms gratitude from a feeling into a strategic plan. It is a mindset that seeks not just to enjoy good fortune, but to leverage it for the greatest possible impact, a demonstration of high performance driven by a sense of duty. The psychological engine behind this transformation is explained by what's known as the broaden and build theory of positive emotions. Developed by psychologist Barbara Fredrickson, this theory challenges the traditional view of positive emotions as mere pleasantries. Her research shows that emotions like joy, contentment, and especially gratitude have a profound and lasting impact on our cognitive abilities and personal resources. When you experience gratitude, it does more than just make you feel good in the moment. It literally broadens your mindset. It makes you more creative, more open to new ideas, and more willing to see the bigger picture. It shifts your mental focus away from threats and scarcities and toward opportunities and abundance. This broadening effect then allows you to build durable personal resources over time. Grateful people are shown to build stronger social bonds, develop better coping skills, and exhibit greater resilience in the face of adversity. By consciously cultivating gratitude for the advantages you've received, the essence of the Ovarian Lottery mindset, you are not engaging in some soft, feel-good exercise. You are actively rewiring your brain for greater creativity and resilience. It is a performance-enhancing mental state. It fuels what is often called a growth mindset, the belief that abilities can be developed. Why? Because when you're grateful for the platform you've been given, you're more likely to see challenges as opportunities to build upon that platform, rather than as threats to your current status. This is business psychology at its most practical. Gratitude isn't the opposite of ambition. It is the most sustainable fuel for it. To translate this theory into a daily practice of entrepreneurship and personal growth, you can use a technique I call the luck ledger. This is a simple but powerful habit that turns passive thankfulness into a proactive strategy. Every day, or perhaps once a week, take out a journal and create 2 columns. The first column is titled Unearned Advantage. In this column, your job is to identify and write down one specific piece of luck, large or small, that you benefited from recently. This could be anything from the stable internet connection that allowed my video call to go smoothly, to the public education system that taught me how to read, to an unexpected introduction from a colleague. The key is to be specific and to focus on things you didn't directly earn. The second column is titled Actionable Gratitude. Here, for each unearned advantage you listed, you must write down one concrete action you can take to either leverage that advantage for a greater good or to pay it forward. For example, if the advantage was a stable internet connection, the action might be spend 15 extra minutes using that connection to learn a new skill that adds value to my team. If the advantage was a helpful introduction, the action could be make sure I follow up by creating value for both the person who introduced me and the new contact, strengthening my network for everyone. The luck ledger does something remarkable. It trains your brain to constantly scan for opportunities and to see your resources not as personal possessions, but as tools to be deployed. It prevents you from taking your advantages for granted and transforms the passive emotion of gratitude into a disciplined, daily routine of value creation and personal growth. The antithesis of this grateful, action-oriented mindset is the all-too-common scarcity mindset. This is the worldview of the individual who, no matter how much success they achieve, is perpetually haunted by the fear of not having enough. Their focus is always on what they lack, not on the abundance they possess. Even in victory, they are anxious and defensive. This mindset is fundamentally rooted in a lack of gratitude for what one has been given. Because they do not acknowledge their unearned advantages, they feel they are in a constant, brutal, zero-sum battle for survival. A person with a scarcity mindset hoards everything: information, credit, resources, and contacts. They view collaboration with suspicion, fearing that a partner's gain is their loss. They are reluctant to delegate or empower their employees, terrified that someone else might take their place. They engage in short-term, self-serving behavior because they lack the psychological security to invest for the long term. This worldview is toxic. It stifles innovation, as new ideas are seen as threats to the status quo. It destroys team morale, as employees feel untrusted and unappreciated. It leads to a lonely and paranoid existence, where every interaction is a transaction and every relationship is a potential liability. You see this in business partners who sue each other over petty disagreements, or in CEOs who refuse to groom a successor. The irony is that the scarcity mindset, born from a fear of loss, is a self-fulfilling prophecy. By hoarding resources and alienating allies, these individuals cut themselves off from the very opportunities and relationships that create sustainable wealth and success. They win the battle but lose the war, all because they could never bring themselves to be grateful for the battlefield itself. The financial manifestation of actionable gratitude is the powerful, often misunderstood asset of compounding goodwill. Goodwill is an accounting term for the intangible value of a company's reputation, brand, and relationships. But in the real world, it is a tangible economic force, and it is built through thousands of acts of gratitude and fairness over time. When you operate from a place of gratitude, you treat your employees, customers, and partners not as resources to be extracted, but as fellow stakeholders in a shared enterprise. You share credit for successes. You mentor junior colleagues. You conduct business with integrity, even when it's not the most profitable short-term choice. Each of these actions is a deposit into a bank account of goodwill. And just like money, goodwill compounds. Over time, this accumulated goodwill becomes a formidable competitive advantage. It means that the most talented people want to work for you. It means that customers remain loyal even when a competitor offers a slightly lower price. It means you get the benefit of the doubt during a crisis. Most importantly, it brings you opportunities that your competitors never even see. People want to do business with people they trust and respect. This is precisely the advantage Berkshire Hathaway possesses. Buffett has spent a lifetime building a reputation for being a fair, long-term partner. As a result, when a great family-owned business is looking to sell, they often call Berkshire first. They know Buffett will protect their company's legacy and treat their employees well. They are often willing to sell to him at a lower price than they could get from a private equity firm that would slash and burn the company for a quick profit. That difference in price is the direct, quantifiable financial return on decades of compounding goodwill. It is a multi-billion-dollar asset on Berkshire's balance sheet, and it was built not with financial engineering, but with gratitude, integrity, and a long-term perspective. This leads us to the fourth pillar, where the Ovarian Lottery mindset fundamentally reshapes your approach to the very essence of investing in entrepreneurship, the calculus of chance. Internalizing the role of luck forces you to develop a new, more sophisticated framework for evaluating risk and reward. You learn to do the one thing that most market participants fail to do: separate the quality of a decision from the randomness of its outcome. A perfect illustration of this is Buffett's landmark investment in the Washington Post Company in the early 1970s. The context is critical. In 1973, the stock market was in a deep and pessimistic funk. The Nifty 50 bubble had just burst, and investors were terrified. The Washington Post, a fantastic company with a near-monopolistic position in its market and a powerful brand, saw its stock get crushed along with everything else. Its total market valuation fell to a mere $80 million. Buffett, looking at the situation, did something brilliant. He separated the variables. On one hand, you had the temporary market sentiment, a factor driven by fear, randomness, and bad luck for existing shareholders. On the other hand, you had the enduring quality of the business itself, its competitive advantages, its pricing power, its talented management. He recognized that he couldn't predict the market's mood, the element of luck, but he could, with a high degree of confidence, assess the intrinsic value of the business. He calculated that the business was worth at least $400 million. The market, in its short-sighted panic, was offering him the chance to buy this $400 million business for $80 million. He didn't know when the market would recover, but he knew he was making a superb decision. He invested over $10 million, and within a decade, that stake was worth hundreds of millions. This is the calculus of chance in action. It's the ability to see a temporary wave of bad luck not as a threat, but as an opportunity to purchase true, durable skill and value at a discount. This ability to separate process from outcome is a direct counter to two insidious cognitive biases that plague even the most intelligent investors: hindsight bias and outcome bias. Hindsight bias is the "I knew it all along" phenomenon. After an event occurs, we retroactively construct a narrative that makes it seem inevitable and predictable. When a stock we picked goes up, we tell ourselves we saw its potential with perfect clarity, conveniently forgetting the uncertainty we felt when we bought it. This bias leads to dangerous overconfidence in our own predictive abilities. Outcome bias is its close cousin. It's our tendency to judge the quality of a past decision based solely on its result. If a risky bet pays off, we call the decision brilliant. If that same risky bet fails, we call it foolish. The problem is that in a world governed by chance, you can make a very good decision that has a bad outcome, and a very bad decision that has a good outcome. Acknowledging the Ovarian Lottery, the constant presence of luck, is the antidote. It forces you to become a process-oriented thinker. Instead of asking, "Did I make money?" you learn to ask, "Did I follow a sound decision-making process?" A professional gambler doesn't judge their skill on a single hand of poker. They judge it on their ability to make positive expected value bets over thousands of hands. Adopting the calculus of chance means you stop judging yourself and others on individual outcomes, and start rigorously evaluating the quality of the thinking that went into the decision, regardless of the result. This is the only way to achieve consistent long-term success in a probabilistic world. To implement this rigorous, process-driven approach, leaders and investors can adopt the pre-mortem and post-mortem framework. This is a blueprint for systematically separating skill from luck in any major decision. Let's start with the pre-mortem. Before you commit to a significant investment, a new product launch, or a strategic partnership, you gather your team and engage in a thought experiment. Imagine it is 1 year in the future, and the project has failed spectacularly. It's a complete disaster. Now, everyone on the team must independently brainstorm and write down every possible reason for this failure. Crucially, you then categorize these potential reasons into two buckets: internal factors, which are things within your control, like poor execution, a flawed strategy, or a misreading of the customer, and external factors, which are elements of bad luck like a sudden recession, a disruptive new technology from a competitor, or a new government regulation. The pre-mortem forces you to confront potential risks and, more importantly, to distinguish between the risks you can mitigate, the internal ones, and the risks you must simply endure, the external ones. Now for the post-mortem. After the project is complete, whether it was a success or a failure, you reconvene the team. You now analyze the actual outcome with the same two buckets. What percentage of our success was due to our excellent process and execution? And what percentage was due to a lucky break, like a competitor stumbling or the market being stronger than expected? Conversely, if it failed, how much was our fault, and how much was simply bad luck that we correctly identified in the pre-mortem? This framework is a powerful tool for self-awareness and continuous improvement. It prevents you from getting arrogant after a lucky win, and from getting discouraged after an unlucky loss. It calibrates your understanding of risk and refines your decision-making machinery for the next challenge. The antithesis of this disciplined probabilistic thinking is the dangerously seductive path of riding the hot hand. This is the mindset of the amateur who mistakes a lucky streak for innate genius. The poster children for this folly were the legions of day traders during the dot-com bubble of the late 1990s. These were ordinary people, often with no financial training, who quit their jobs to trade technology stocks from their home computers. For a few years, it seemed they couldn't lose. They bought any company with .com in its name and were rewarded with breathtaking profits. They appeared on television, were profiled in magazines, and became icons of a new financial era. They truly believed they had cracked the code. They attributed their success not to the fact that they were in the middle of one of the most powerful speculative manias in history, a massive, system-wide wave of good luck, but to their own unique skill in stock picking. They were not investors. They were gamblers on a winning streak who thought they were prophets. They suffered from extreme outcome bias. Because their bad decisions were leading to good outcomes, they saw no reason to change their process. They took on more leverage, traded more frequently, and bragged more loudly. When the bubble burst in 2000, their skill vanished overnight. The tide of luck went out, and they were revealed to be swimming naked. Fortunes that had taken years to build in other careers were wiped out in a matter of months. They failed to understand the calculus of chance. They never stopped to ask, is this me, or is this the market? They were playing a game of musical chairs, convinced they were the best dancers, and were utterly shocked when the music stopped. Their story is a timeless warning against the dangers of confusing a bull market with brains. The direct financial translation of this probabilistic mindset is the concept of expected value. This is the mathematical tool that professionals use to manage luck. The formula is simple. Expected value, EV, equals the probability of a gain multiplied by the size of that gain, minus the probability of a loss multiplied by the size of that loss. A decision with a positive expected value is a good bet, even if it sometimes results in a loss. A decision with a negative expected value is a bad bet, even if you occasionally get lucky and win. Let's imagine how Buffett might use this thinking in a simplified way to evaluate an investment. He looks at a company. He might think there's a 60% chance that his thesis is right and the stock will double in 5 years, a 100% gain. There's a 30% chance it will just tread water, a 0% gain, and there's a 10% chance he's wrong and it will lose half its value, a 50% loss. The expected value would be 0.60 * 100, 0.10 * 50, which equals 60 minus 5, or a positive expected value of 55%. This is a good bet. Notice he isn't trying to predict the future with certainty. He is acknowledging the different possible futures and their probabilities. He is thinking like a bookie, not a fortune teller. An amateur, driven by outcome bias, might make one such bet, lose due to that 10% chance of bad luck, and conclude the strategy is flawed. The professional, the probabilistic thinker, knows that as long as they consistently make positive EV decisions, they will come out far ahead over the long run. This is how you transform a philosophical appreciation of luck into a rigorous, mathematical edge that builds massive wealth over time. Finally, we arrive at the fifth and culminating pillar of the Ovarian Lottery mindset, the legacy of luck. This is where the philosophy transcends personal success and becomes a framework for leadership, institution building, and creating lasting value. If you truly believe that your success is a product of not just your own efforts, but also the system you were born into, your ultimate purpose must logically extend beyond yourself. It becomes about strengthening and improving that system for the next generation. It's about building something that can outlast your own lucky ticket. For Warren Buffett, the ultimate embodiment of this principle is his meticulous, decades-long planning for the succession of Berkshire Hathaway. For years, the single biggest question hanging over the company was, what happens when Warren is gone? Many feared the magic would disappear, but Buffett, ever the rationalist, has been systematically working to make himself obsolete. This is a profound act for any leader, especially a founder of his stature. He has not just chosen successors like Greg Abel and Ajit Jain for their investment acumen. He has chosen them because they are carriers of the Berkshire culture. He has spent half a century building not just a portfolio but a system of values, integrity, patience, rationality, and a deep-seated partnership orientation. His goal is not to find another Warren Buffett, but to ensure that the machine he built, the culture he cultivated, is so robust that it can continue to compound capital and operate ethically for another 100 years without him. This is the ultimate expression of the Ovarian Lottery. It's the recognition that your own genius is fleeting, but a well-designed system, a powerful culture can endure. It's a shift in focus from being the star player to being the architect of the stadium in which future generations can play and win. The psychological hurdle that prevents most leaders from reaching this stage is a combination of the endowment effect and status quo bias. The endowment effect is our tendency to place a higher value on things we own or have created, simply because they are ours. For a founder or a CEO, their company is often their life's work, their creation. This effect can make them see the company as an extension of themselves, leading to a deep-seated, often subconscious belief that it cannot possibly thrive without them. Status quo bias is our natural preference for the current state of affairs. For a long-serving leader, the status quo is a world in which they are in charge, making the key decisions. The idea of succession, of changing that status quo, feels threatening and uncomfortable. Together, these biases create the Sun King CEO, a leader who becomes a bottleneck, who micromanages, who fails to delegate meaningful authority, and who refuses to seriously groom a successor. The Ovarian Lottery mindset is a powerful antidote to this. If you constantly remind yourself that your position of leadership is itself a product of immense good fortune, it lessens the ego's grip. You begin to see yourself not as the king but as the steward or the gardener. A king's goal is to maintain power. A gardener's goal is to cultivate a system that will flourish and bear fruit long after they are gone. This mental shift from my company to this company is the critical psychological leap required to build a true legacy, an organization that transcends the individual. To put this legacy mindset into practice, any leader, from a startup founder to a Fortune 500 CEO, can use a powerful thought experiment known as the bus test protocol. It is simple, slightly morbid, and incredibly effective. Step 1. Imagine that tomorrow you are unceremoniously hit by a bus. You are gone. The question is not whether the company will mourn you, but whether it will survive you. Step 2. With that scenario firmly in mind, take out a legal pad and list every single process, decision-making authority, and key relationship that currently resides solely with you. What knowledge exists only in your head? Which clients will only talk to you? Who has the final say on capital expenditure? Be brutally honest and exhaustive. This list represents the key person risk you are currently imposing on your own organization. Step 3. For every single item on that list, create a concrete, 3-step action plan to delegate it, document it, or automate it over the next 90 days. For example, if you are the only one who understands the company's financial model, the plan might be: 1. Schedule time to teach it to your CFO. 2. Create detailed documentation of how it works. 3. Have the CFO run the model for the next board meeting with you as an observer. The goal of the bus test protocol is to make yourself, systematically and deliberately, less essential to the day-to-day functioning of your business. This is not an abdication of leadership, it is the highest form of it. It is the work of transforming your company from a personality-driven enterprise into a resilient, system-driven institution. The alternative to this path is a well-documented and tragic one, the founder's dilemma, which often leads to the reign of the Sun King CEO. This is the story of the brilliant, visionary founder who creates something amazing but cannot let it evolve beyond them. They become a victim of their own success. Their identity becomes so inextricably fused with the company they built that they see any attempt to professionalize management, to introduce new systems, or to empower other leaders as a personal attack. The most famous example is Henry Ford in his later years. The man who revolutionized manufacturing and put the world on wheels became a paranoid autocrat in his old age. He terrorized his top executives, including his own son Edsel. He stubbornly refused to move on from the Model T, even as competitors like General Motors were innovating with more modern designs and consumer options. He had won the Ovarian Lottery of being the right man with the right idea at the right time, but he came to believe it was all due to his singular, infallible genius. This hubris nearly destroyed the company he had created. He couldn't distinguish between the interests of Henry Ford and the interests of the Ford Motor Company. This is the ultimate endpoint of rejecting the Ovarian Lottery. You become a prisoner of your own myth, unable to build a legacy because you cannot imagine a world that doesn't revolve around you. The company becomes a monument to your past, not a platform for the future. The direct financial connection here is clear and is priced by the market every single day. It's the concept of the key person risk discount. When financial analysts evaluate a company, they don't just look at the numbers, they assess the quality and depth of the management team. A company that is overly dependent on a single individual, a charismatic founder, a rainmaker salesperson, a genius engineer, is considered inherently more risky. This risk is quantified and results in a lower valuation multiple for the company's stock. The market knows that if that one key person leaves, gets sick, or, in the parlance of our blueprint, gets hit by a bus, the company's future earnings are in jeopardy. The stock price of such a company will often plummet on the news of the CEO's departure. Conversely, a company like Berkshire Hathaway, which has spent decades preparing for succession and building a decentralized, durable culture, trades at a valuation premium. The market has confidence that the system is stronger than any one individual. Therefore, by executing the bus test protocol, by actively making yourself less essential, you are not diminishing your value, you are directly increasing the financial value of your company. You are de-risking the enterprise for your shareholders, your employees, and your customers. This is the ultimate financial payoff for the legacy mindset. You are transforming your personal human capital into durable institutional equity. It is the final and most profound act of a leader who understands that their greatest responsibility is to build something that will last. You have just been given a powerful piece of mental machinery. The concept of the Ovarian Lottery is not a simple platitude about being humble. It is a strategic operating system for decision-making under uncertainty. You now understand that acknowledging luck is not a weakness, but the foundation of the intellectual humility that protects you from catastrophic error. You see how that humility can be channeled into a form of actionable gratitude that builds compounding goodwill and fuels sustainable ambition. You have a new framework for analyzing risk, for separating the quality of your decisions from the randomness of their outcomes. And you grasp the ultimate purpose of a successful life, to build systems and a legacy that can outlast your own good fortune. This single mental model, if truly integrated, can change the entire trajectory of your career and your financial life. But it is crucial to understand that this is only one piece of a much larger puzzle. The mental models used by the world's greatest thinkers are not isolated tools. They are an interconnected network, a latticework of ideas that support and enhance one another. You have just forged a critical link in that chain, but the chain is not yet complete. The Ovarian Lottery gives you the foundational mindset, the humility to operate effectively. But what about the specific tactics for analyzing a business? What about the models for understanding human psychology in a negotiation? What about the frameworks for allocating your time, your most precious and non-renewable resource? Each model you acquire makes every other model you possess more powerful. The journey of building your mental arsenal has just begun. The video that is now appearing on your screen is not an accident. The algorithm has identified it as the next logical step in your journey. It is another piece of the map, another link in the chain that connects these powerful ideas. It represents a choice. You can click away, satisfied with the powerful tool you have just acquired. Or you can make a different choice. You can choose to continue the ascent. You can choose to add another weapon to your cognitive arsenal to see how the next principle locks into the one you've just mastered. This choice is not about watching another video. It is a choice about the kind of thinker you want to become. Are you someone who collects interesting ideas? Or are you someone who builds a complete, robust system for winning? The next piece is right there. The only question is whether you are committed enough to your own growth to take it.